Coach Darrell Royal's 1968 Longhorns were champions in every sense of the word, gaining momentum every week. In doing so, Texas played before 6 sellout crowds for an average of over 58,000 fans per game, the most explosive offense in Southwest Conference history. Another great season for athletic director Darrell.
68, those years were very tumultuous, I guess is the right word. This Vietnam War was going on. That's when I first got involved in kind of this protest thing. I told you my dad had spoken at some of these rallies. I think there was one with 100,000 people here. My parents were very progressive too, very politically progressive. And we always talked about politics at the dinner table. And Dad would talk about what he was doing at school.
But a lot of times, Kirk and I would be walking through the lobby of the architecture school, and Alan would come out and say, "You guys got time for a cup of coffee?" And he'd take us across the street and buy us a cup of coffee, just because he needed somebody to talk to. He was besieged by what was going on. Well, Erwin was not a popular figure with the faculty or the students. He would really target particular people and particular departments if they weren't towing the line. Unfortunately, the architecture department was one, so
he didn't even know where the line was.
Right.
Everybody had really long hair, and Frank Erwin just couldn't stand that. He used to call this the zoo because it was probably the most radical school on campus. And not only that, the dean, my dad, was he was speaking at these things, and Frank Erwin thought he was kind of adding fire to the fuel about these protests, and he actually was. Whether it was buildings or whether it was environment or whether it was war, music and whatever it was everything was protest oriented.
Protest was normal. The idea of protesting something was not, really crazy. It was protests were happening all the time. And the sort of Frank Erwin side of the equation didn't see any of that as legitimate. All they saw were long-haired people, who were disrupting everything and who absolutely must not be permitted to exercise those illicit behaviors.
Kirk was more aware of it happening than I was, because as a representative of student government, you served on the planning committee or interfaced with the planning
grounds.
Yeah. But obviously a lot of students knew when D-Day came that the contractor was going to show up and actually implement the group moving and so forth. So the law students, working with professors, had already filed a request for a restraining order downtown with the judge to prevent this from happening. So, like all contractors, it was going to be early in the morning when they showed up, and they did. There were several hundred students that had shown up in anticipation of this, and some of them were the law students, so they told them, It wasn't like the president of the construction company, it was a bulldozer operator. And they explained to him that there was a pending restraining order, and they were waiting till 10 o'clock, I think, for the judge to make a ruling. And he said, fine, I don't really want to cut down these trees any more than you do, so I'll just wait. Well, that word got back to Frank Irwin and other senior administrators at the university. And so he showed up and was yelling at people and so forth. That brought out the real police. It was clear that he wasn't willing to wait for the judge's restraining order, and he told the bulldozer operator to get to work.
His actual words were, "Get the big ones first."
Right, get the big ones first. That was a Daily Texan headline.
When that came up about Waller Creek, naturally, trees, there's really no tree huggers back in those days. That was previous. I think that might have been one of the first examples of true tree hugging. I think what they did was they took those trees and they drug them all the way from Waller Creek over to the president's office and put the trees in front, blocked his door with the tree branches. So I thought that was pretty cool for back in those days. It was a big deal.
Irwin pushed back and said, well, we have master plans. And Kirk knew, I'm sure Irwin knew, that, and he pointed it out, Kirk pointed it out by asking Irwin, well, isn't it true that there is no approved master plan for this campus?
Nice to see that the architecture students led that fight, kind of this environmental battle. It was also political because nobody liked Frank Irwin either, so there were all kinds of components involved in that demonstration.
And at the time, we had not even the remotest concept of how our behavior would impact the college or the School of Architecture. It just wasn't on our mind at all.
The education is kind of special in that the students are taught to take initiative and make things happen. It's not an academic pursuit. It's go out there in the real world and make something happen.
I think the thing that ties the environmental movement in the 60s and the 70s to the environmental movement today, the environmental movement of the 60s began to look outward. We have a more natural system here. We appreciate it. The people of Austin have fought to keep it that way. For example, Shoal Creek and Waller Creek being the two north-south waterways that are in Austin, those areas are finally getting the attention that they need. They've always been important, but they've never really gotten the attention that they deserve, and they are now.
If the city pays attention to that engine of creativity called the School of Architecture, good things happen.
I think we need to step back and look at what what it does to our earth, you know? Climate change, the environment is more important to me than buildings. And I think architecture students, to me, are the ones who can kind of send that message out and kind of practice what we preach.
I have never sensed a lack of motivation in students. In my 50 years of teaching, I'm always motivated by something, and often it's public good, a shared environment. It goes beyond a building. Creeks and freeways are not buildings. So I would just encourage people to develop all those skills on the skill side and all the knowledge on the knowledge side, and willing to put that together and make something happen, make something good happen.